Well, thank you very much. So am I the first presentation?
Are.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but
Yes.
I will not go through a PowerPoint. You all have the materials in your folders already related to my office. I'll simply go through what the changes are from last year. Specifically, it's dealing with body-worn cameras again. Over the course of the last year, we made some significant changes in the way that our processes work with the police department. Prior to the changes that we made, a police officer would be responsible for pushing video to my office, where my attorneys would then get that video and be able to use it in court. It became a frustrating process for the police and for my attorneys and paralegals, simply because the officers would not always remember to push the video to us. We would have to go in and find it. Eventually, we decided that it had to change. What we did was switch that process where my staff actually goes into the police CAD system, identifies all the body camera footage related to a particular case, and then pulls it to my office rather than ask the police officer, who's already spread thin enough, to go ahead and send that information to us. It is more work intensive for my office, but it does work much better. Additionally, the Virginia Beach Police Department rolled out about 350 new body cameras over the course of the last year. But those cameras were mainly on detectives and supervisors, where they don't generate as much footage as a street officer would. So really, all my office needed were 2 legal assistants and 2 body camera clerks in order to deal with these changes. In conversations with the city manager, we agreed that we would split that over a 2-year period. And so my budget has an increase reflecting 1 body camera clerk and 1 legal assistant in order to deal with these changes, and then we'll be doing the same thing next year. So that's the change in my budget, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Colin? Rocky?
Mayor. Colin, I know when you talk about the implementation of the body-worn cameras by VBSO personnel, I'm guessing that's just going to double what you need on that FTE to take care of that, assuming that they come online.
So I think we're really going to have to take a look and see what's generated by VBSO with those body camera footage. If it's deputies that are out on the street assisting the police department, then that may in fact generate more footage for my attorneys to have to go through. If it's simply interactions in the jail that does not result in criminal charges, then that would not have as much of an effect. So I think it'd be better for us to just take a wait and see approach as to what the impact would be of those cameras. But that is something that we may be talking about again next year.
Thanks, Colin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Mr. Jones and then Ms. Henley.
Hi, Colin.
Sir.
I read the part of the budget discussion about the public defender's office. And how's that working out with those, I guess, allowances?
Yes, sir. I think it's been extremely beneficial to the public defender's office. I certainly am not one to speak for them. I'm sure Mr. Bain would be happy to come and address that, but it's my understanding that it's made a significant difference in retention of staff for that office. I imagine there may be a request in the future because the supplement went to attorneys before. I think there may be a request for some sort of supplement towards staff as well. But again, that's something that I think Mr. Bain would be able to address better than I would.
I know you recommended it.
I did, yes, sir. I think it was the only fair approach to take, and I applaud council for the steps that you did take in doing that last year.
Barbara?
That was part of my question, and I'm trying to get it straight in my mind with the constitutional officers and state employees and so forth, what our role is with all of them. Do we supplement your office?
Yes, ma'am, you do.
And we do that just on a regular formula, or is that something that we consider every year an amount?
Every year, it's up to council what our supplement would be. The council has been very good to my office over the years, and it's a commitment, obviously, that you all have made that you want to have a safe community, and as a result, you recognize that the state does not provide the funding needed in order to provide the services that my office does, that the citizens of Virginia Beach have come to expect. I will say this, it's something that we're trying to address on a statewide basis. My office currently, like every Commonwealth Attorney's office in Virginia, is conducting a time study with the National Center for State Courts that is run by the state's comp board, with the idea being that the state wants to get an accurate view of what exactly each office is doing, services provided to the locality where the state is not picking up those funds. And hopefully this time study will provide us a better picture in seeking funding from the General Assembly for those services that my office provides.
This is certainly a good time for the state to catch up on some of these things that the localities have been picking up. I mean, they're the ones who are flush with cash now, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Good time, and we'll have to follow that through, because I think it's important, because it does make a disparity among localities if some are supplementing, some aren't, and also it's just creates a little bit of uncertainty. The other thing, back to the body-worn cameras, I know that when we started, there were going to be a lot of issues that you needed to work out, and handling it is, part of it, and so forth. I think one of the questions, too, was how long all of this had to be retained, and space issues. Has that worked out?
It has worked out. We've worked out retention with the police department on various videos. Obviously, if it becomes attached to a criminal prosecution, then the Library of Virginia's destruction policies come into play. And some of those videos we will never be able to destroy. They'll be a part of a criminal file and that kind of thing that will have to be maintained forever. Others will be on set schedules for destruction. For videos that do not become part of a criminal prosecution, the police department then has a schedule for destroying those videos as well.
It would kind of be interesting to see just how much the whole body-worn camera process cost. I guess there's somewhere a total, but it's apparently, I guess everybody's still working the bugs out on that. We'll see.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else, Guy?
Thank you, Colin, for your presentation and for all your good work. I just would comment mainly for the public, since the question was raised about the public defender's budget, that Cal's report indicated that most of the money that we allocated for that supplement had been directed at the lowest levels of attorneys, newer and less experienced attorneys in his office, and that and had eliminated much of the disparity at that level, but there was still significant disparity at the higher levels that still was a concern to him and ultimately might be a concern to us as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Limward.
Hello, Colin. Just a question. Employee vacancies are rampant throughout the city. How is your department doing?
We're doing pretty good with hiring. I will say this, we've had one category of job, which is paralegal, that we routinely have had a hard time filling those positions. I'm not sure that it's a lack of interest as much as it is the requirements of the job, which is why my office has expanded to legal assistance. And what my budget request was for was legal assistance, because we seem to be getting far more interest from individuals that do not have a paralegal certificate. But that was just really one job position. We have very great success at this point in filling attorney vacancies and other vacancies in our office. I know that being competitive in the job market is something that council is taking very seriously, and not to wade into your discussions on that, but my body-worn camera clerk that I'm asking for in the budget, the hourly rate for that clerk is $12.50 an hour, where Amazon and Target are paying $15 an hour. So those are the companies that we're going to be competing with to try and get the folks in to deal with a very important aspect of our job, which is getting the body camera footage from the police department to our prosecutors to be able to deal with it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Barbara?
Just kind of realistically, and this is a general comment for our employees in general, we had a very good presentation at the last planning district meeting from the economist, Mr. Greg, can't say his last name.
Gutenhurst.
But he made the point that, with the increase in salaries that people are having to do, if you're going to have people work for you, it's primarily on the lower level more than the median level. And I think we might as well, just bite the bullet and recognize that we're going to have to work on that level, and $15 an hour seems to be the amount. I think we probably need to keep track of just how many positions we've got citywide that is under that amount, and what it will cost us, because I think we're going to have to get there, whether it's all this year or within the next year or two, but I think we're going to have to recognize that.
Well, that's a great point. Could we get that kind of information, Mr. Duhaney? Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Ms. Wilson?
I just wanted to thank Colin. He has agreed to serve on our Mayor's Commission for Youth Violence that we're going to start meeting this week. So
Great.
thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
And Colin, if I can give you and your entire crew a personal thanks, I think sometimes we forget to recognize when we talk about being the safest city in the country. We talk about police. We talk about the sheriff's department. We talk about EMS. But your department is equally as part of the success that we have. And when the 911 folks come up, I'm going to say that too. When you think about what it takes, what integrated systems it takes to keep a city of 460,000 people safe, I can't thank you enough for the work you do personally, and please convey the council's sincere appreciation for everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I will, and I know you've each heard me say this to you individually, and I'm happy to say it here. The dedication that this council has shown to my office and the support to my office is what allows us to provide the service to the citizens of Virginia Beach that we do. And so I thank you all for that support very much.
Thank you.
You might get your escalators back, too.
No, let's not push it.
That's right. I don't want to set a standard too high. I'm not sure in my 30-some years that they have ever worked.
Yes.
It's in the budget.
Budget last year, too.
All right, well, thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I asked the budget director, Kevin Chatelaire, to add some more context on a couple of items, in particular the defender and how we supplement the constitutional officers. So go ahead.
No, thank you. Hey, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. As Colin was just talking about, Colin's office is a constitutional officer. And so that, yes, they are state employees, but at the state level, that's governed differently with constitutional officers that service localities. The state comp board actually provides the locality for a reimbursement, but all of the FTEs within the constitutional offices receive a city paycheck. So they're basically on the city payroll system, and the city receives a reimbursement for those. The difference between the constitutional officers and the other court agencies, such as the public defender's office, is that there's no arrangement, there's no requirement of a locality to do anything like that. Unlike the constitutional offices, where we're required to cover a percentage of the fringe benefits, and we have some of those requirements. That's not necessarily the case with the public defender's office. So that's the reason that the structure of the supplement was set up as an MOU between that state agency and the city. We don't have access to their personnel, their payroll records, or any of that, so we rely on them for that information. They provide an annual report per the MOU that was signed at the direction of City Council last year, and then it goes out in the form of a flat supplement to the attorneys as they determine how to allocate those resources once it goes back. And then next year, should City Council continue forward with the program and the initiative, the $500,000, which equates to about $16,000 per employee or per attorney supplement, as it's programmed in the FY2023 budget, then we would go through the process again next year. We would then get an annual report from Cal Bain if he's the public defender next year or that office, and then we would then provide that to City Council for deliberation and consideration at this point in time in the budget process.
Yes, Mr. Jones.
While we're on the subject of supplements,
Yes, sir.
I read the information about the deputy clerks particularly in the Juvenile Domestic Relations Court
Correct.
and so forth. And some of it was discontinued. Is that?
No, sir. So the background on that was City Council had implemented this initiative back in, I believe, like 2019. Then whenever the pandemic budget occurred, so it took place for 1 year, then the pandemic budget occurred, all salary supplements and all that was removed. And with the adoption of the current year's operating budget, City Council did put that back in place. So they are receiving it in the current year. I believe the current supplement is $1,200 per deputy clerk. And again, that is a court, a true state court. It's part of the city's operating budget because we're required to cover some of the supplies and operating costs.
Did the state then discontinue some of their funding? And something happened where they lost money. What was it?
Not familiar with on the state level, the deputy clerks for the courts losing money. I know that in the current year they had received an increase and proposed in FY23. The state's proposing to increase it another 5%, but I'm not familiar with them losing anything on the state side.
Losing employees.
Again now.
Okay. Okay, Barbara?
On this question of constitutional officers and so forth, like I say, I'm kind of trying to get that straight in my mind. Okay, so the state compensation board is factored into all of that and so forth. But they get a city check, so they're, from that standpoint, city. But what about benefits? Is that all a part of the state, or is it the same as ours?
They receive the same benefits as city employees.
Constitutional.
Yes, constitutional officers. And the state reimburses or covers a percentage of that, and I think the state reimburses us like 10%. So, yes, we cover the VRS cost and all those costs associated with those employees' health insurance, and we receive a portion of a reimbursement from the state for that.
Well, holidays used to be an issue. I think maybe we're kind of similar now on what state holidays and what city holidays, but I know there would be holidays that state employees would get that city employees didn't get, and I mean, it's just a confusion for me, and I'd like to really get it straight and for everybody.
If it's okay, Councilwoman Henley, perhaps in a Friday packet, I could provide a quick synopsis of this court or this constitutional and kind of the split in the relationship, city, state, and how those dynamics work, and include that in a future Friday packet. Would that help?
Yes.
Especially as y'all are
Yes,
working
please.
through these budget presentations?
And then with constitutional officers, they don't hire through the city's human resources. They have their own hiring practices. Is that correct, by and large?
I believe they do advertise through the
Yes and-
city.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
So some of the constitutional officers, they take different varying degrees of services from our HR department. Some of them will go full cradle to grave. Some of them will go just to advertising. Some of them will go through their own processes as they're authorized to do per their statutes. So it varies and depends on what the constitutional officer wants to participate in at the city level.
Well, I think this is going to get to be an issue as we're looking at the whole funding issue and whether we're being comparable in pay. I think it's going to be an issue we really need to kind of clarify for all of us so that we know what we're doing and we're as fair as we can be to all of the employees and as well as the taxpayers. But we also kind of hit this last year with these bonuses that both the state and the city was giving because of the CARES Act and so forth. And it looked like at some point, we were in competition with the state on whether somebody was going to get a bonus or not. It just gets to be confusing. So if you can help us through this, because I think we are going to be considering a lot about, what we're working with all of the employees on this budget, and I think we need to be careful.
I'll
Thank you.
compile as much of that information I can and consolidate it into a future Friday packet for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure, Mr. Jones, this is what you're talking about, and I don't want to get ahead of Chief Judge Hollowell either, but on page 4 of the package, on the J&DR District Court operating budget that we got, there is a schedule that appears that the Juvenile Domestic Relations Court has requested $86,000 for additional supplements to staff and contracted manpower. And it also appears to me that the city manager's recommendation does not include those amounts. It's flat from the previous year. So they're asking for more. So far, the manager has not recommended that amount be given. I'm not sure whether that's what you were referring to or not.
I read that part of it, but there was also, in the information that I read, there was something about the state that had given a supplement too, and that they didn't match it this year or something. And I'm just curious if you could just let us
Yes, sir.
know
I will.
what that was. I may be mistaken, but I believe.
I could be as well. I could not be recalling that, but I will get further clarification and get you a response. Yes, sir.
I'd be remiss if I didn't point out as one additional fact, this also reflected in here, has been a real bleeding of staff in that J&DR court, in the clerks. Most of them, I think they've lost 26 people in the last couple of years.
That's reflective of what they're getting paid.
Right, and the tracking indicates at least more than half of those left for better pay.
Okay, Kevin, thank you. And Kevin, I think we got to give you the nickname, the architect. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.